Hello, people. So I've been browsing through my channel recently, and I've been replacing some old videos that maybe there's a very low viewership, or the sound quality is not great, and so on. It may well be that I've got similar videos in the past to this one, but I think the issue is important, and I think it's always relevant. It's one of those things that, sometimes crops up in the news because of a particular development, but it's always there in the background. It's always something that is worth talking about. One of those kind of issues, anyway. And the issue is Muslim women and the headscarf. Now, there's a lot of ways to look at this, and I think a lot of people have a knee-jerk reaction in the sense that they don't actually think through all the issues involved. So the knee-jerk reaction I'm referring to tends to be, oh well, women should be allowed to wear whatever they want, and a reasonable side of one would say, well, sure, that should be the case. But when you scrutinize a little bit more, there is a problem with consistency. There is a problem with attitudes, and I want to explore this a little bit. Now, Emmanuel Macron has just won re-election in France. His rival, Marine Le Pen, one of her main policies, at least one of the most focused on policies, was her plans to ban the headscarf in France. In France, the issue of secularism, of course, is extremely important. It's a major part of the French state, the modern French state, the separation of religion and the state. Macron said that he would look at the 1905 constitutional measures. I haven't studied French constitution, so I can't say in detail what that involves, but he was talking about that particular approach to secularism. Um, Emmanuel Macron can't be accused of being woke. That's one thing. In contrast to some left-wing British and American politicians, Macron has actually taken quite a critical stance on things like critical race theory, and so on. And he's taken quite a hardline stance on Islamists within France, rightly so. Let's not forget, it's only a few years since a teacher, Samuel Paty, was beheaded in France. A teenage girl was forced into hiding because she got into an argument with Islamists and they threatened her life. Um, there's no secret of the fact that France has been targeted in Islamist terror many times. So anyone judging France needs to look at the French context. I think that's very important. France has one of the biggest Muslim populations in Europe. If it isn't the biggest, it's certainly in the top three. I think Spain is pretty big as well because of the history there. Germany's fairly big. The UK is sizable, but we're smaller than France, I think. This is not exact, but I think it's roughly 2 million Muslims in the UK, 4 to 5 million in France. Um, some of those women wear the hijab, some don't. This is a point that needs to be addressed. Not all Muslim women wear it, or not all Muslim women living in the West necessarily feel compelled to. But what I want to scrutinize is this narrative. It's a choice, it's a choice, it's a choice. Because over and over again, hijabi women and their supporters will say that. Well, what I would say and what I've observed is I think for them, for the people who are saying that, it probably is their choice. They probably have decided that for whatever reason, whether it be for religious reasons or whatever, they feel comfortable in it and it is their choice in that sense. But the claim that it is a universal choice for Muslim women is a simple lie. It just is not true. And this can be testified to the fact that a few years ago in Iran, young women very bravely publicly removed their hijabs in an act of defiance against their morality police. Now, in a conservative Islamic society where women are deemed to be immodest if they don't wear it, then it is a revolutionary act, removing it. That risks vitriol from religionists. It risks beatings from the morality police. It even risks imprisonment. It's not an exaggeration. That makes the courage of those women very admirable. And it's why when I hear such things as Hijab Solidarity Day in Washington, D.C. and other parts of the West, I'm thinking, well, what's the message here? You're trying to say to Muslim women, you know, stand up strong against the Islamophobes, the anti-Muslim bigots, right? But where's the consistency? If this is really about choice, why are Muslim hijabi women not forcefully defending the right of their sisters not to wear it? You know, where's the passion there? If they say it's all about choice, if they insist it's all about choice, then they should be forceful in standing up for the choice of women who choose not to wear it. But that's scanned. That is scanned. Now, they might, on push on this, they might say, yeah, those women should have a choice. But will they really go out of their way? Will they go on solidarity marches? You know, for example, outside the Iranian embassy to protest the treatment of their sisters who are not being given a choice. Um, and the hypocrisy of some Western feminists, I emphasize some, who will really virtue signal on this is astonishing. You know, after years of railing about the patriarchy, here they have a symbol that many would say is a patriarchal symbol, and they're being cheerleaders for it because they don't want to be seen as Islamophobic. I emphasize some, you know, you will find different views within feminism about this. Um, Regarding Le Pen's policy, now, for me, a big issue with Le Pen was her coziness with Putin. In that sense, I'm pleased that she lost because I think it would be a very serious problem to have a leader of a major Western power who's that, you know, cozy with Putin. But on the issue of banning headscarves, I understand it. I understand why the Pen's pushing that, and there will be many people who agree with it. I do think, though, it probably shouldn't be the priority because I think France has a much bigger threat from male jihadists than it does from hijabi women. The same in the UK. I mean, when you weigh it up, what's a bigger threat? A guy who's you know, spewing out pro-ISIS content on the internet, or you know, preaching in street corners against homosexuals and Jews and so on, or a hijabi woman who's minding her own business? I think the answer is obvious. So for that reason, I'm not really on board with banning it. I don't think that's necessarily the right move. Um, I know people say, well, in Islamic countries they have these rules. Well, Islamic countries have a more backward attitude to human rights than we do. So, you know, we shouldn't put ourselves on level with their values. The fact, for example, that in Iran and elsewhere, even non-Muslim women are obliged to cover up. I don't think we should weigh ourselves against their values and say, well, they do this, so we should do that. Um, because it also, unfortunately, it also lends to the narrative that the West is Islamophobic and there's some sort of war on Islam, which is rubbish. There isn't. But banning the hijab, for example, it creates that attitude, and it creates this attitude, oh, look at the hypocritical West. They're criticizing us, but they're banning the hijab. Now, I don't think there's any equivalency. I think the situation for Muslims in the West is much, much better than minorities in Islamic countries, and indeed many Muslims in Islamic countries. But I just don't think banning it should be the priority. I certainly think in the case of it's important to understand the different terminology. The hijab, you could say the face. I guess some hijabis would argue, well, look at the last 2 years, we've all been wearing masks, and that hasn't obstructed communication. But that's exceptional circumstances, and it was never going to be long term. Hijab, I don't really see as a major problem other than the modesty doctrine that's behind it. In terms of communication and so on, I don't really think it's an issue. Um, I do question the modesty doctrine. I do question this idea that, oh, if I wear the hijab, I'm modest. Well, the implication there is that women who don't are therefore not modest. And I would say if that's not your view, then say so. Um, that issue of modesty needs to be addressed. Saying it's just a choice is a little bit empty without weighing up what that really means. Okay, it's a choice. Why? Why do you choose it? What is it about the hijab that you like? Is it because you're pious? Is it because you think it's modest? What is it? That needs to be addressed. The niqab and the burqa, again, I'm not sure about banning them. I wouldn't put it this way, I wouldn't lose sleep if the burqa was banned. I certainly wouldn't be going out of my way to defend it. I think it is a backward, extremely misogynistic garment that really shouldn't be welcomed in the West at all. Um, I don't think that the niqab and the burqa should be normalized or seen as just another choice. I mean, in Western culture, someone's body language is very important. When you're talking to someone, the expressions they have, what they're saying, it matters. And Niqabi women may say, well, I could speak clearly through this. Yeah, but the other person cannot see your body language. They cannot see if you're angry, if you're happy. For example, in some sort of dispute in a shop, or it could be anything. Um, and I would say it is clearly a statement of separation. It's a clearly a rebuke to Western culture. Now, is anyone honestly going to deny that? I'm talking here specifically about the niqab and the burqa, not the hijab so much. I mean, I've heard of, for example, the reason I differentiate is because I've heard of even hijabs that are kind of styled up to be fashionable, and women who wear them who really do it for a fashion thing, and it's little to do with religion in that sense. I honestly have seen that in Indonesia and elsewhere. I've seen hijabs in different colors and modeled basically to be a fashion statement. I'm not saying I agree with that, but I do differentiate between the hijab versus the niqab and the burqa, particularly in grounds of communication. Um, I know, incidentally, I've known a few hijabi women. One of my neighbors is, respecting her privacy. I remember, I will say this because I don't want to be misunderstood, but my father had a heart attack last year, and my neighbor very kindly came around with some fruit just to see if it was all right. I was flattered by that. It's been some years since I spoke to her. She's quite pious, she's a devout Muslim and she's a hijabi. Now, if she saw this video, she might be offended and think, well, I think this and that. All I would say respectfully is I support the right of women to choose the hijab, even if they really insist the burqa and the niqab, although I do question that mentality. But in terms of the hijab, I support that right. But I would simply respectfully ask that they also support the right of women not to. Um, Incidentally, when Boris Johnson has got heat over this, the irony is he's actually been speaking in defense of it, i.e., against a ban. Um, Britain is not France, but we do face some similar issues in terms of Islamic extremism. I just think that the focus should be on Islamist cells. Islamist attitudes come into it, and part of that does get into attire. I don't think it's a priority. I think the priority should be those who are supporting Islamic State, who are spreading anti-West lies, and so on. I also think that we should make a statement when there's hijab awareness days or hijab solidarity days, that should at least be coupled with non-hijab solidarity days. And I think there should be, you know, messages at the highest level, right up to number 10, saying we support the right of women not to wear it as well. But there's this pathetic, politically correct idea that we can't do that because it would be somehow Islamophobic. Then that's the final issue I'll look at. The issue of Islamophobia is kind of problematic because not every Muslim woman chooses to wear it. So, saying, for example, that a negative portrayal of the niqab or the burqa is Islamophobic assumes that all Muslim women wear that. In the UK, many Muslim women don't. Um, either because they feel more westernized or they're not pious or whatever the reason is, but they've chosen not to wear it. So, saying that criticizing headscarves as Islamophobic ignores the fact that, it's actually kind of paradoxical Because on one hand, if you're saying it's Islamophobic to criticize the hijab, but then on the other hand, oh, but Muslim women have a choice. Well, if Muslim women really have a choice, then it's not criticizing all Muslims, is it? Anyway, I'll round this up, but I just think this is an issue that people tend to have a knee-jerk attitude to, and they don't really consider all the issues. They don't consider that it's, there is more to this than just choice. There is. Um, Incidentally, in terms of burqas and niqabs, it's a fact the male jihadists have used them as a disguise in suicide bombings across the world. I mean, there are other garments that we ban with good reason. You can't go into a bank with your face covered up for obvious reasons because you're going to look like a bank robber. There's a security issue there. I think in certain circumstances, definitely the burqa and the niqab should be banned. I think in banks. I think in areas that involve national security, the armed forces, for example. Um, and I don't think you could be a Niqabi and serve as a soldier or a sailor, or someone who's an air personnel, not full Niqabi. Why? Because it's an obvious issue regarding security, regarding the issues of body language and all the other things we've spoken about. I mean, how is that going to work if you have a row of recruits and one of them chooses to be in a full burqa? How is she going to, how is a drill instructor going to interpret her body language different from the others? It's clearly absurd. It's clearly absurd. The hijab can be somewhat more adapted, but even then, it's not ideal. Um, so all of these things need to be looked at, and I think that people are so keen not to offend that they're scared to talk about the issues. And the typical refrain would be, "Oh, you're a man telling me what to wear." I'm not telling anyone what to wear. What I'm saying is there are issues involved here that go beyond just the surface level. Thanks for watching.